guitar magazine, but I got to get close to this just to try to get a little bit of mojo off of it. This is this is Booker T's Hammond B2,
B2.
and
Yep.
this is where we got Green Onions.
Yep, he used this to record Green Onions. And again, I mean, I just can't tell you how much music was probably done on this organ, on this very spot. What we're in right now, we're in the recreation of Studio A, the big, the main Stax recording studio. Got Al Jackson Jr.'s drum kit over here. You got Wayne Jackson's horn, Andrew Love's saxophone, and right here on the spot. I mean, it's just, you're standing where Otis Redding recorded Sitting on the Dock of the Bay right now.
Mr. Pitiful
Yeah,
and
all
These
that's-
Arms of Mine. This is impressive, Tim. What do you call this?
This is the Hall of Records. This is where roughly 300 albums that were recorded at Stax and the 800 singles are all on display. If you know the story of Stax, it's really fun to look at the artwork and watch the progression of the artists and what they did, and just the album covers alone. It's just, it's amazing.
Well, there's obviously a lot of great soul guitar in these albums, but
Yeah.
take us to school. If there's one album you think we should go and revisit, what would you say?
Right here you've got Jam Together. This is Steve Cropper, Albert King, and Pop Staples all playing guitar together. And I honestly don't know if this is out on CD, if it's been repackaged, but if it hasn't, it should be. And if anybody can find the vinyl, you'll just absolutely flip when you hear these three. Because Pop Staples was a great guitarist. A lot of people don't realize what a great guitar player he was. He was real subtle, but he was awesome. And to have, Albert King and Steve Cropper playing on there with him, this was a work of genius to put those three together on an album. It was great.
Seeing all these Otis records, tell me if this is true. I've heard that he wasn't a great player himself, but he would use open tuning so he could just kind of do one finger across all the frets,
Yeah.
and through that method he'd write his songs.
Otis basically wrote his songs in his head, and he wrote them as he was performing them. He could play a little guitar, and he carried it with him everywhere, and he would get kind of the basic tunes down. But he would walk into the studio and say, "All right, I want the horns to go da 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 da, and I want the drum, this to go ba 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 ba," and he would just jump up and down the studio, just like prancing around, just like this crazy ball of energy, and everybody would just get into it, and people would come out of their offices and freak out, and everybody just loved it whenever they knew Otis was coming. But yeah, he
All this from a kid in his 20s.
though Otis Redding did all this between being 22 years old and 26 years old. He came here as the driver and equipment handler for another band called Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Toppers. He had played around with them a little bit in Macon. They did some talent shows and things together. But when they got their audition at Stax, they hired him to drive them up here. So he gets out of the car, pulls all their equipment out. This is according to people who were here at the time. He's here all day. He's bugging Steve Cropper and Jim Stewart is like, y'all let me, give me a chance to sing. Give me a chance to sing. Because he had won all these talent shows. And so many of them make it that they told him he couldn't be in the talent shows anymore because nobody else had a chance. But they didn't know him from Adam. And so at the end of the night, the Pine Toppers session hadn't gone all that well. And Steve Cropper, goes over to Jim Stewart and says, look, this guy's been patient. He's been here all day long. And he just wants to get up and sing something. Let's just, give him a break. And he got up and started singing These Arms of Mine, and they just flipped on the record button, and everybody was like, whack, the hair on everybody's arms stood up, and that was it. That was the recording of These Arms of Mine. Yeah, yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah.
That is a seminal recording. That's something else.
Yeah, Otis was unique in many, many ways. Yeah, he only lived to be 26 years old, so all of his career was in 4 or 5 years.
Just noticing this over here, it's the Abbey Road takeoff.
Yeah.
Where was this taken?
This was taken right out in front of where you're standing right now. This was the original Stax records, and you could tell that the museum looks almost identical to the old Stax records. And this was when they did their Abbey Road takeoff. They all went out and walked across the street, like the Beatles at Abbey Road. But it looks, it really looks kind of very similar now. Even not just the building, but the street itself.
When we drove up, I was thinking there's a lot of history here that isn't too many layers deep. You can still see a lot of what I'm seeing right there.
Yeah. There's just on the corner over here. There's this is still a beauty shop and a barber shop, and there's still a burger place over here. A lot of that. But yeah, Booker T and the MGs. This was taken by fellow named Joel Brodsky, who also took the Young Lion photograph of Jim Morrison. A lot of famous rock and roll photographs. We own a collection of his photos that's available to travel around the world. And they took the Stax label and gave it a lot of sub labels because at the time you couldn't get a radio station to play that much music from just one label like Stax. It would be favoritism. So they divided up and gave them different. They got like the Hip label, and the Enterprise label on Stax was named after the spaceship on Star Trek. That was Al Bell's favorite television show. They broke out into comedy, gospel, spoken word. A lot of people don't realize that Jesse Jackson recorded here, Richard Pryor recorded here, Moms Mabley. And so they had all this wild stuff going on, as they got bigger and bigger. And
Tim, this caught my eye from across the room. Pop Staples guitar. He played a lot of stuff. You see him in photos with Les Pauls and Stratocasters. Here's a crazy-looking Gibson. Look at the pickups on that. You got the hums and a blade. He was a versatile guy, huh?
Pops was awesome. People know the Staples singers. They know the songs. They don't think a lot of people don't realize what a genius Pops was. That on the guitar, especially the album we just looked at a while ago with Steve Cropper and Albert King, and real guitar players from the era will all tell you that Pop Staples was one of the baddest cats on guitar.
Well, Tim, here's a classic-looking 335. This is Little Milton's.
Yeah, this belonged to Little Milton. Little Milton came to Stax in the early 70s and was one of the most famous blues musicians to come out of Stax.
There's nothing like a new instrument, but you see these historic pieces and they're kind of ganked out, and you see the wear and tear. I mean, that's history we're looking at there. As a matter of fact, this 335, it's an orange label. It's quite a piece here.
It is. There's some, when you look at that, you can just feel all the the wear and tear, being good wear and tear. Somebody that traveled and made so many people happy, and fitting that it's the 50th anniversary of the 335, which is what this is. It belonged to Little Milton.
All right, so this Worko thing is just it's freaking me out. That's so cool. It looks like one of those old Sears Dan Electros, and we see now here on the sign the Worko was a Sears thing.
It's from Sears, and I would love to know how Albert King came across a Sears guitar like that. It must have been, I would think, early in his career. I don't know, because later on, of course, you've got the purple flying V over here.
Yeah, totally known for the V. And
the Worko.
Who gave him this V?
Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top gave him this V. I'm not sure exactly when that was, but Albert cut some great music on the guitar. This is one of my favorite things in the museum. It's just, it's purple, it's metal flake, it's the flying V. It's just, it just screams Albert King.
And for folks new to Albert King, of course, he's left-handed, but he had a right-handed setup, so the low strings are upside down, and there's certain tones and textures that you just can't get any other way unless you play a guitar that way.
Right, yeah, and Albert King was one of the best.
Look at this baby. Tell me about this.
This is Isaac Hayes' 1972 Eldorado Cadillac with gold trim. It's got a refrigerator in it, a television. I think Isaac got this as part of his contract renegotiation with Stax in 1972 after he had won the Academy Award for Shaft. And he was really funny. Every time he came to the museum, he would come over to the car and just kind of shake his head and say, "Yeah, man, I drove it.
That's it right there.
That is the wah-wah pedal. That, I would venture to say, in addition to Isaac's genius, this might be one of the reasons that he won an Academy Award and that Shaft is one of the most memorable songs ever recorded, because that is the wah-wah pedal that Skip Pitts played on Shaft on the recording, and nobody had done that really, and nobody's ever done it like that since.
Thank you so much for the personal tour. That was quite a treat getting to see all that stuff up close.
It's fun, isn't it? Yeah. It's the only soul music museum in the world, so there's a lot of stuff here that if you love soul music, this is the place to come see it.
If people want to check it out, what do they need to know?
Just go to staxmuseum.com. All the information is on there. You can read about it. You can take a virtual tour, and not the same as being here, though. So everybody needs to come see the Stax Museum. Yeah.
If for anything else, just to get close to the wah-wah pedal, pick up a little mojo.
You got to get close to the wah-wah pedal. Especially if you're a guitar player, you need to almost touched the wah-wah pedal. Maybe we'll take it out one day and we'll let everybody just kind of do a quick wah-wah and the shoes of the great Isaac Hayes and Skip Pitts.
Lots of history. I do recommend you come check it out. Thanks again, Tim. I'm Joe Coffey, and you're tuned into PremierGuitar.com.